And welcome in, my friends. Oh, do you smell it? Oh, I smell the stuffing. I smell the gravy, the mashed potatoes, the turkey. Wafting, wafting. It's in the air. Welcome into the latest edition of Fifth Avenue Faceoff for your Thanksgiving week. And I say that because there's a lot going on this week. A couple things to look back on after a back to back, both in Raleigh and in Pittsburgh against the Golden Knights, and plenty of action around this Thanksgiving holiday weekend. Hi, I'm Chris Mack, by the way. If you're watching on the 93.7 The Fan YouTube page, thank you. It's much appreciated. Be sure to tap the little notification bell down there. You'll find out as soon as new episodes are available of Fifth Avenue Face Off and any video content actually posted to the 93.7 The Fan YouTube page. If you're listening inside your Odyssey app or however you get your podcasts, iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify, however you do it, be sure to follow or subscribe to Fifth Avenue Face Off so that you get new episodes as soon as they are available. So, the Pens get a big win on Sunday night against the Vegas Golden Knights. A big 3-0 win. Their fifth shutout of the season. Three by Tristan Jarry to this point. One by Alex Nedeljkovic last night against Vegas. And a fifth one that was split between Jarry and Magnus Hellberg out in Anaheim a couple of weekends ago. But they lead the league with 5 shutouts. They've also got some of the best goal differential because of those 5 shutouts and that Big 10 spot they put up against San Jose a couple weeks ago. They've got some of the best goal differential in the league. When you look at the NHL standings right now, if you just sort it by goal differential, guess who's going to come up in a pretty good spot? In fact, second in the Metro Division, Pittsburgh Penguins, plus 12. That's nice. That would be good for, let's see, 4, 5, 6, 7th best in the entire league. Yet when you look at the standings, there they are, just outside the playoff picture. 18 points in 17 games, 9 wins, 8 losses, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And to be quite honest, if it's this kind of back and forth, 1 or 2 losses here, 1 or 2 wins there, and not too much streakiness, I think that may be enough to sustain you beyond the Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays and into the new year. I know. I've said over and over again so far this year that they have to be in playoff position after Thanksgiving or around Thanksgiving because, well, if you look at it historically during the NHL salary cap era, 75% of the teams that end up in the playoffs were in playoff position on Thanksgiving. And I still hold firm to the fact that they need to be right there. But right there, as it stands right now in the Eastern Conference, is just slightly better than 500. Really. In fact, if you count overtime and shootout losses as straight losses, which I know we don't, there's loser points. Tampa, who's in the final playoff spot as of Monday afternoon at 2:30 Eastern, Tampa would have a losing record, 8 wins and 10 losses, because 4 of their losses have come in overtime or a shootout. They've got enough points. Other than that, the teams right there on their heels, the Pens, the Wings, the Devils, all in the 8 or 9 win area with 8 or 9 losses, a few of them here and there in overtime or shootouts for other teams. In fact, the Penguins are now just one of just 5 or 6 teams in the league who don't have an overtime or shootout loss. But here nor there, remain right around 500. And I know that's a low bar. This is not the Pittsburgh Pirates. But remain right around 500. And I think they'll be in a decent position going into the new year where hopefully all this roster turnover that you've had will start to congeal. And look, we've seen it start to come together in some spots. Right? Look at the third line, the easy O line. I'm going to keep plugging away at that moniker until it sticks. Eller, Zahorna, and O'Connor. Not a great night. Not a super great night. Saturday in Carolina. Sunday night against Vegas. Another good night for them. They continue to, when they have rough patches, bounce back from them very quickly. Second line, not so great. There has to be a fix for Rickard Rakell. and even Riley Smith to this point. Evgeny Malkin, who started the season really well, I thought, with both Smith and even though Raquel wasn't scoring goals, his line mates, he's come back down to earth. It feels like he's being dragged down right now by Raquel, especially, and Riley Smith, neither of whom is playing exceedingly well right now. It's why you saw Radim Zahorna get some shifts on Malkin's line this past weekend. I don't think that's the answer, but you have to start getting creative somehow, moving people around. I would dread breaking up the easy O line, the third line, for any length of time at this point, because once again, Sunday night against Vegas, if you want to go by shot share, if you want to go by expected goal differential, the third line was right there with the first line as the best on the team. It's been what we've seen really since they put those three together, since they admitted their mistake and called up Radim Zahorna and got him on the third line with Lars Eller and Drew O'Connor. So that being said, I don't want to break that up. I know you maybe want to take one of those guys and plug him into one of Malkin's wings to see if he can help jumpstart Smith and Malkin. Malkin and Smith aren't the problem so much as Raquel. And what they need to start considering, even as well as the first line has played, Sidney Crosby, third star of the week in the NHL, by the way. Golf clap for him. What they need to start considering is moving Raquel back to Sid's wing, where he has played exceedingly well in the past, and moving Brian Rust, who's had chemistry with Evgeny Malkin in the past, down to the second line. And that is something that they need to give real consideration to. Will they? I don't know. Mike Sullivan can be stubborn at times, but it's that or what, as far as getting Raquel going? You can put him down on the third line, break up that third line that you like that I just talked about. Well, you can put him down on the fourth line. No, that's not happening. So short of benching Rickard Raquel, which I don't think they ought to do, short of putting Rickard Raquel up in the press box, the next best thing is to give him some time on Sid's wing. Maybe give him some time on the power play even, because that power play continues to have its issues. Either way, they've got to do something to jumpstart Rickard Raquel. That second line as a whole needs to find something. But I think once Raquel gets going, that'll be a big impetus towards moving the second line back in the right direction. Here nor there, what was great about the Vegas win was it was relatively low event hockey. And I know that's not great for TV. That's not great for us as fans, but it felt like it was a really calm and controlled kind of game, which is exactly what they needed on the heels of Saturday night's game, much of which I listened to on the radio. By the way, speaking of golf claps and recognizing those who deserve recognition, Steve Mears and Phil Bork on the radio side, listened to most of that as I was driving back from the Penn State football game, and it was high event hockey. There was a lot of back and forth. Tristan Jarry was having to make some big saves. And even when he didn't make saves, or I should say, even when he did make saves, it still wasn't enough to offset when he wasn't able to make the saves. I don't want to put Saturday night completely on Jarry, because it wasn't completely on Jarry. It was on the team as a whole and playing too much high event hockey, for lack of a better way to put it, giving up 11 high danger 10 or 11 high danger chances, which was fairly even with what Carolina yielded to the Penguins as well. But the Hurricanes just made more out of their opportunities. And that leads into a discussion I do want to have about Jarry as it relates to what we saw on Sunday night from Alex Nedeljkovic, who got his first start back at the NHL level in a few weeks after going on a rehab assignment down to Wilkes-Barre Scranton. He scored a goal down there. He scored 2 goals at the AHL level. How about that? Good for Nettie. Not so good that he busted out his Browns jersey after the game. He's from there. I'll cut him some slack. But a Myles Garrett Browns jersey, like I would have respected a Nick Chubb jersey a whole lot more, like an Amari Cooper or an offensive lineman, maybe like Jack Conklin, No, he goes with the Myles Garrett jersey. Anyway, here nor there, Nedeljkovic played really well in a low event game on Sunday. We keep talking about how, or at least I see people talking about how Tristan Jarry doesn't always make the save that he's supposed to make. My bigger concern with Jarry is not, failing to make some routine saves here and there. It's that he doesn't make up for it at all. Nor, and I've said this before, does he lift up his teammates when they make mistakes. There's very little makeup in Jari's game. If things go bad, he's not one of the guys that helps make up for it on the back end. He's just not. And I think more often than not, he makes the saves he's supposed to make. He just can't make the big ones that can turn a game back in the right direction. Occasionally you'll see it, maybe once every 4, 5, 6 games, but that's not nearly often enough. Like, I think of young, in his prime, Marc-Andre Fleury, and people will say, oh, in the playoffs. I know, had his issues in the playoffs, but young, in his prime, Marc-Andre Fleury would always come up with the huge save that you needed at just the right time, seemingly always, right? He might make 2 mistakes earlier in the game, but he would make up for it later. His teammates might hang him out to dry once or twice on odd man breaks, but he would make up for them making their mistakes. You don't see that from Tristan Jarry. And even though, again, it was relatively low event hockey against Vegas on Sunday night, what you got from Alex Nedeljkovic was just enough. Just enough. A big save here and there, and just enough. So that when and if he did make a mistake, and I didn't see him make any big mistakes on Sunday night, he was there to clean up his own mess or to clean up his teammates' mess. There were very few odd man breaks for Vegas on Sunday night, but the few that were there, Nedeljkovic made the saves, and he picked up his teammates. Now, maybe there was less of that to do for Nedeljkovic on Sunday night than there was for Jarry necessarily on Saturday night down in Raleigh, but nonetheless, he still took care of it. And I do think they need to ask themselves, what is the right ratio for how these two are played throughout the rest of the regular season? And do we start to get to a point where maybe it should be more of a 50-50 split? That's something to keep an eye on here, especially as you go up against teams that can capitalize on that breakneck transition game style, crushing you for your own mistake style of game. And you got 3 coming up here, which folds right into the look ahead for the Penguins to Thanksgiving weekend. The turkey is on the table, as they say. And this turkey might be tough to chase down. You might remember, it was before this stretch of 6 games started, right? I think I said, I'm not asking for too much. Just get me 8 points in 6 games, right? 8 points in 5 games, but I was willing to settle for 8 points in 6 games because that would put them in a better spot than where they were at 500. And they're not going to be able to get there. Sorry. Unless they rattle off 3 in a row here, and it would become 4 in a row, they're not going to get there. And look, the Rangers have not lost in regulation in their last 10. Buffalo right around 500, as is Toronto in each of their last 10. Buffalo has struggled a little bit more than the Penguins this year, but not by much. Toronto, especially given the way they started the season, has the ability to capitalize on that kind of high event hockey that I talked about was not played against Las Vegas. And the Penguins, whether they like it or not, have to play boring hockey this week. I know it's tough. You got people coming back to town for the holidays, the Wednesday night game against the Rangers, and then you're going to go up to Buffalo, and you think you should be able to take care of business against them, so maybe you don't buckle down, and then Saturday night you come back home, and a whole bunch of people are going to come down from Ontario because it's the Leafs in town. The Toronto fans like to travel down to Pittsburgh, so you're going to want to put on a show, for the fans. Don't try to. Try to win. See if you can win these 3 games without scoring more than 7 goals total in the 3 games. See if you can win. And look, I'd love to see you score more, but make it more about shot suppression and offense suppression than offense generation. Because here's the conclusion I've come to. You've got enough talent, whether it's Crosby and his line, whether it's Malkin once the second line gets going again, whether it's Erik Karlsson on the back end. You've got enough offensive talent on this team that you shouldn't be pushing and pressing to create offense. It kind of just happens naturally. It's like putting on your shoes and going for a walk down the street. Oh, I woke up this morning. I just created 3 high danger chances while I was yawning and stretching because I'm the Pittsburgh Penguins, right? It should be that easy. The hard part is buckling down and preventing the other team from getting those opportunities. The Penguins have played, and Sidney Crosby has played exceedingly well. He's the best player in the league, arguably, right now, even strength. They need to lean into being the best 5-on-5 team they can be, and that starts and ends with responsible, boring hockey. Make the smart play. Don't try to make the extra pass. Put the puck on net or get it deep, depending on where you're at. Puck possession and retrieval. Make the other team come after you. Make them chase the game. Even if you're down a goal. Seriously. I thought about this a little bit Sunday afternoon. Different sport, but as I was watching the Steelers and Browns, and throughout that game, the Steelers were only down by a score. As poorly as their offense was playing, they were only down by a score. Part of it, they were going up against a quarterback making just his second NFL start. Not to go off on a Steelers-related tangent here, but all they had to do was keep it close, right? And we've seen them time after time after time, even though their offense isn't great, come through when all they needed to do was keep it close, and then they show up in the fourth quarter. The Penguins, all they need to do is keep things close, and then the offense will come naturally. It will. It may not look like it on the power play sometimes, but they're overthinking things on the power play. At even strength, the offense will come naturally. So play smart, play responsible, don't try to do too much, and let the game come to you. It's real. I hate to oversimplify things, but that's how you keep from that's how you keep from helping the opposition generate odd man rushes coming back your way. Once you start trying to do too much. And look, it's hard to preach that to guys who are so offensively gifted that they're used to just taking the puck and playing with it, especially a guy like Erik Karlsson, right? Hockey for him is not the same if the puck is not on his stick, right? Same could be said for Evgeny Malkin or even Chris Letang. All of those guys, the game is the game when the puck is on their stick. It's not necessarily about finding the soft spot but that's what they need to focus on this week. Good old-fashioned, low-event, boring 2-1, 3-2 style victories. That kind of hockey. They do that. They get a chance to win 2 out of these 3, if not all 3 this weekend. That's probably pushing it. I'm not very hopeful for the Rangers game, but anything's possible. Even if you get a point out of it, right? Even if you just get it to OT, they've got to start thinking like an English soccer team. Like, just get me a point, mate. Like, if it 0-0, play everything like you want it to end 0-0. And you know what? If your offensive talent doesn't win out against the opposition's talent, then so be it. You know what? If you end up losing in a shootout 3-2, and look, it sucks if it's a division rival that gets the extra point, but take your loser's point and keep on going. Nobody's happy to lose. That's not my suggestion. That isn't the goal. But if they play these next 3 games against the Rangers, Sabres, and Leafs, and look at them, and let's even roll next Tuesday in Nashville into it as well. If you take those next 4 games, and I do this all the time, I take chunks of games and tell you how many points you need to get out of them. If you win 2 of those games, but you lose the other 2 in overtime because you just played good old-fashioned, tight-checking, responsible, low-event, boring hockey, you got 6 points in 4 games. Let me do the quick math here. Hashtag math. You know how we love that here on Fifth Avenue Faceoff. Let me do the math here. If you get 6 points in 4 games, over the course of 82 games, you're going to end up with 123 points. I'll go one further. Just win 2 of these next 4 against the Rangers, the Sabres, the Leafs, and Nashville. Just win the ones on the road against Buffalo and Nashville. You can beat both of those teams, right? And look, I'm only asking you to get to OT with one of those other 2 big city teams, right? The Rangers or the Leafs. So get me 5 points in 4 games, okay? Now that even gets us to 102 points, that kind of pace. 5 points in 4 games. It's that simple. There is a very simple math, a very simple calculus, algebra, whatever you want to call it. Not Common Core, because I got a kid in 5th grade and I can't handle Common Core math. I'm sorry. But there is a very simple hashtag math for how you get to the playoffs in the NHL, even with this much talent. And it doesn't include fire wagon back and forth hockey, giving up odd man breaks the other way, hanging out your goaltenders to dry, and hoping they can come up with the big saves, especially if they're not really good at coming up with the big saves. Don't hang them out to dry. Don't ask your D to do too much. Play simple, safe, steady, English Premier League style hockey. And you know what? You win a few 2-1. You lose a few in overtime 2-1 or in a shootout. All good with that. Hey, I'll admit at that point, the best reason to go to the arena may not be the game itself. It may be the nachos or the beer. But if your team ends up in the playoffs, does it worry you that much? Again, they got to just simplify it and play some good old-fashioned, boring style hockey. That's got to be the plan over this week because it worked against Vegas. It did. And it's worked for them multiple times this year, really. Go back and look at what they've done this year, the Penguins, and more often than not, the games that they've won have been because they've played that good old-fashioned low-event hockey. And they've capitalized on those opportunities. They can do that. And against team, when they're the better team on the ice, think against Anaheim a couple weeks ago. Maybe not the first one at home, but the one on the road in Anaheim. They win that 2-0. That's the perfect example. Your goalie leaves late in the game. You're trying to figure things halfway through the game. You're trying to figure out, man, can we beat this team? Why do they have our number? All this stuff that starts to swirl around in your head and forces you into making mistakes or trying to do too much. They didn't. They didn't try to do too much. And that's what they've got to do. They've got to play simple, steady, at times boring hockey. And that will be enough. Like I said, we don't need 5-6 game winning streaks offset by 4 and 5 game losing streaks. Streaky, no good. That tells me that you're doing the right thing for a couple of weeks at a time, and then you fall out of the habit because you think you don't have to anymore because you can just get by on your talent. No. Give me 1 or 2 wins and a loss or 2 in a row here and there. But I don't need massive streakiness. Because look what this team has done so far this year, right? A 3-game losing streak. Actually, 5 out of 6 they lost, followed by a 5-game winning streak, followed by losing 2 in a row. Now they've beaten Vegas, and again, Rangers, Buffalo, Toronto this weekend. But I'll take back and forth. I'll take the wild mouse over the steel phantom, for lack of a better way to put it. Give me those simple little rolling hills, right? Nobody has any. You don't have kids? You haven't been in an amusement park? Wild mouse? Idlewild? Come on. You know what I'm talking about. I don't need big, massive hills and drops, peaks and valleys. Slow, steady, and yes, at times boring will win the race, or at least get you into the playoffs when you don't have goaltending that can absolutely steal it for you on a nightly basis. And they don't have goaltending that can steal it for them on a nightly basis. Maybe that's something worth keeping an eye on because they will get an opportunity here with back-to-backers on the weekend to play Nedeljkovic again. Do you play Nedeljkovic Friday in Buffalo? Or do you play him Saturday at home against the Leafs? I know what I'd do. I know what they'll probably do. I would play Nedeljkovic against Toronto. I would. I'd let Jari get the start Wednesday against the Rangers, see how he handles it, and then go again Friday up in Buffalo, and Nedeljkovic would get the start on Saturday. That's what I would do. But however they play these three teams, again, keep it simple, slow it down. Not like sludge or, quicksand, but don't try to do too much, boys. You're more talented than the other bunch. Maybe not the Rangers, but with your high-end elite talent, you're going to have the opportunities to score. When you get them, take advantage of them. Don't hang your goaltenders out to dry. This has been my Thanksgiving PSA. Enjoy your holiday. I appreciate you hanging out with me for a few minutes to talk about where the Pens go from here and look back on this past weekend. And next week, we will have another new episode for you after that Nashville game. We will continue to plug away as the Penguins continue to try and plug away and stack points throughout the first half of this season so that when they look up, whether it's at Thanksgiving, whether it's at Christmas, New Year's, or even come the All-Star break, Valentine's Day, trade deadline, they're right there in that playoff spot where they need to be. And then, well, who knows from there. Again, be sure to subscribe or follow the podcast however you get it, especially if you're right here on the 93.7 The Fan YouTube page. It's much appreciated. I'm Chris Mack. Thanks to Greg Finley for producing. This has been the latest edition of Fifth Avenue Faceoff.